Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
So next, I'm going to be passing it to our senior investor on our ventures team, Nurjit Sidhu, who'll be talking a little bit more about our trends across financial services, health tech, and more, and really across Chicago, the Midwest, and surrounding regions. So Nurjit, I'll pass it over to you.
Stephen, thanks so much, everyone. It's good morning to you, and it's good to spend some time with you. I hope everyone stayed safe over the last year through the pandemic. Hope you're getting a chance to enjoy some summer weather as well. And excited to spend some time talking about Chicago, some of the trends we've seen already, some of the signals of where we believe financial services is going. I myself lived in Chicago from 2014 to 2017, so I certainly miss the city, and I'm excited to be part of any type of momentum we can continue to support around tech and early stage innovation. In terms of the trends I wanted to cover today, I'll be briefly covering three. The first is really the boom in data and analytics we've seen across financial services. And here we have the output of a survey I sent to our financial services partners roughly 2 months ago, really trying to understand what areas of tech they anticipated their largest investments within, and whether that was changing at all because of COVID, whether it was accelerated through the digital transformation narratives we heard a lot about through the last year. And really through the survey responses, although the distribution changed a little bit by who responded over email and who replied directly through this form. But really what I saw was a dominant concentration around two areas, which were AI and automation, as well as data quality and new sources of data. And so I think that to me is a reflection that some of the shifts we saw pre-COVID only continue to be accelerated, and some of the early stage innovation that we continue to see that are selling their solutions to large asset managers, banks, insurers, and are really focusing their value propositions across artificial intelligence, automation, new sources of data, data management, and cleansing are really going to be some of the solutions that drive the most innovation toward these large enterprises. I think we've also seen somewhat of that inflection point where the industry broadly has kind of lagged behind, for instance, your tech SaaS companies, your Googles and Apples of the world in terms of how quickly they've implemented AI. But really now I think is a good time in which we are really starting to see some of these partnerships and a real demand for it, especially coming out of COVID. If we look through the last few years, the ethos that data is the new oil has really proliferated across enterprises broadly. So here, for instance, I charted the Google Ngrams incidence of data as the new oil, which basically reflects the extent to which a specific phrase has entered vogue within our narrative. And I think this is really something we see true for a lot of our own partners as well, where they've spent really the last few years aggregating new types of data. They've spent a significant amount of effort around frameworks of how to manage that data, how to keep that data private, what new sources of data would be useful for them from an underwriting or a best customer experience perspective. And I think this inflection point continues to grow. I think this rise continues to be an area through which we see some of the greatest value being driven to enterprises. And really, the notion that the insurer of the future, the bank or the asset manager of the future, broadly the enterprise of the future, is going to be a data-driven company, I think is something we're seeing true within our own ecosystem. It's a message we're seeing our startups find a lot of success with. And so this is something I'm personally very excited about, just the adoption of this ethos and the implementation of it in the actual infrastructure of enterprises across financial services. When we think about data and analytics, I think it's really three different specific trends that I'm most excited about. First, and we can kind of debate how long this will last for, but I believe we've entered the golden age of AI-based automation and augmentation. And it's really been catalyzed by what's been a fairly challenging year for all of us on a personal level, but also challenging for enterprises, many of whom have had to move to purely virtual customer touchpoints, practices, processes in a very short and unexpected amount of time. And so I think the investments and the interest we'll continue to see, both from bottom-up employees or startups who are proposing these solutions and seeing the amount of interest from the decision makers and also from the top down, from the C-suite and the boards who are creating mandates around their specific employees finding new solutions to partner with across AI and automation will continue to grow. Second, I think the need for data management tools, from data cleansing and enrichment to privacy, as we've seen the implementation of fairly sweeping legislation like the GDPR and CCPA, will continue to be fairly significant, and any types of tools that can support enterprises within financial services around their data management practices, I think will continue to drive some of the most significant value within the industry. And finally, I'm starting to see and would expect to continue to see far more boom in a demand for new types of data, whether that data is being used for things like interoperability or for things like continuous underwriting classes of risk that previously banks, asset managers, and insurers found difficulty being able to underwrite. The second trend I'm personally very excited about and starting to see strong signals around is embedded finance. And embedded finance is something I define as the creation, sale, or support or improvement of a financial product, whether it's on the insurance or the banking and asset management side, by really a company that hasn't started in that space or doesn't really define most of its brand within financial services and financial products. So here, for instance, I think of some fairly large companies like T-Mobile or Shopify who have created debit cards, who have really invested a significant amount of their brand and future innovation budget within creating an architecture around payments, an architecture around savings, to really be more than just a telecommunications company or an e-commerce service in the case of Shopify. And within insurance, if you think about, for instance, an OEM or an energy company like Tesla, which on this chart on the top kind of understood that their cars were costlier to insure by other insurers. And so really seeing that as a key push for them to vertically integrate, to offer their own insurance products starting within California and then expanding to Texas. In the case of Pumpkin, which is a pet insurance product launched by the largest producer of vaccines for pets in the world, or in the case of Beam Dental here on the bottom right, a connected toothbrush, which can be used for underwriting consumers, selling them dental products in a really innovative way, partnering with employee benefit solutions. I think this landscape of where we find insurance, how connected it is to the brands, the spaces, the products we most trust and use, I think has vastly changed. It's brought a lot more excitement and diversity in terms of the talent and the company partnerships we see across financial services. And I think it makes a lot of our current relationships opportunities for financial services companies to continue to grow. When I think about the specific trends across embedded finance, I think of three specific ones. The first is that I think financial products will increasingly be sold by brands and spaces we trust. I think the historical process of going to a new location, of creating a new relationship to buy a financial product, those folks who are meeting for the first time have to be educated on one financial product versus the other, their incentives versus the incentives of another salesperson. I think that process is already dramatically changing and will continue to change as we see generational shifts and buying behavior move from offline to online. Second, I think enterprises really have a significant and new unique opportunity to partner with these embedded finance companies, startups within this space, or large enterprises who historically haven't offered financial products, and to provide them with capital, data, and capacity. Finally, I think consumer tools will continue to be a really significant part of this shift we saw even prior to COVID, which is financial services is more as an ecosystem rather than just a specific transaction or a specific product that covers one segment of someone's risk or one segment of someone's strategy around their savings and debt. The final trend I wanted to briefly cover is just the current momentum we're seeing within Chicago. And there it's really focused on the past few years and the number of unicorns we've seen. And so if we can move to the next slide, please. On the far left, we see companies like Kin and ClearCover, which are new products within insurance that are based in Chicago who have quickly grown to become unicorns. In the middle, we see Avant and Uptake, companies across kind of AI and lending broadly, who again have quickly grown to become unicorns. And on the far right, unicorns of the future, all companies based out of Chicago, I think map really well with some of the trends I've covered. And so I think the momentum we have already within the city is fairly significant. I'm excited to try to be a small part of it, to continue to support it through plug and play. But I think already the types of companies we're seeing, the success they're having within financial services reflects that a significant part of the future of innovation within financial services, even at the startup level, I would expect to come from Chicago. So with that, I'll pause and I'll move to the startup presentations. If there are any questions or one of these points resonated with you that you'd like to discuss further,